Sup world, I'm Dioxide. Many of you may know me from playing Diablo 3 as the Demon Hunter Blaster that likes to min-max, theorycraft, as well as push many rank 1 world clears on the leaderboards. Well, I've gotten pretty lucky to get into the early impressions Diablo 4 beta from Blizzard. And with that, I kind of want to share the experience that I've had playing the game. And of course, without question, you all know that I'm going to min-max the rogue. So in this video, I'm going to talk about everything you probably want to know or are curious about when it comes to the rogue class. If nimble gameplay, moving around the battlefield, positioning, high DPS glass cannon is kind of your type of play style, then you're going to enjoy the rogue. Let's get right on into it.
And found my trade in the shadows. They call it murder. I say, job well done.
So let's talk about weapons real quick. So each slot, a 2-hand slot, and then you have 2 1-hand slots. You have the bows and the crossbows. The bows are going to attack a bit faster than the crossbows. They're going to hit a bit weaker each time they attack. The animation is also a little more subtle versus the 2-hand crossbow kind of having more of a chunky animation every time it shoots, but it shoots a bit slower, but does a bit more damage. Unlike previous games, it doesn't just end there. Bows and crossbows have a primary attribute that you have to take into account. For instance, the bow has X% damage to distance enemies, whereas the crossbow has X% damage to vulnerable enemies. It goes just further than just attack fast, attack slow, which hits harder, which doesn't. You have to take that into consideration. Onto the one-handers, you have the daggers and the swords, and the daggers are going to attack faster but hit weaker. It has a primary attribute, does percent damage to close enemies, so you definitely want to be like real close to the mobs, because not only that, the dagger has a shorter range, so when you're using basic attacks, you kind of really need to be on top of the mobs to really trigger that. However, the swords have the percent crit damage attribute that can be applied to, well, for the most part, anything or any playstyle. The swords hit slower, they attack slower, but they do hit a little bit harder, but they have a bit more range. So if you kind of want to play on, the outer skirts, but in melee range, swords will definitely do that for you here. Specializations is where you really pick how you really want to play your rogue. Specializations unlock after doing a specific quest in the campaign. Specializations are as follows. So we have combo points first. And this specialization throws a new UI element of involving 3 pods on top of your bar that basically is empty until you fill it. Every time you hit with a basic attack, one of those pods fill. Each pod that you fill will give perks to specific skills like damage, movement speed, chance to proc X effect, etc. Generally, what you really want to do here is hit with 3 basic attacks, then use a core skill to maximize all of your effects. Combo points is definitely for those who like a more bursty style of play, or you just simply like seeing ginormous damage numbers, which I'm kind of guilty of. Next, we have Inner Sight. This specialization throws a new UI element next to your energy, which you also have to fill, but in a different way. A target becomes marked, and as you approach the enemy, and any damage dealt to that target will fill up this new gauge. The more damage you deal, the quicker that gauge also fills up. Once it's full, you'll gain unlimited energy for 4 seconds. This is pretty much the exact opposite of combo points, where the idea is to spam a specific core skill or skills as much as possible. Using this has the potential to be able to run without using a basic attack at all. I think this would be a very popular specialization, as spamming your strongest skills has always been a favorite for many action RPG players. Now, the last one, Preparation, is the one that we haven't really been able to use or pick or do anything with, because unfortunately it unlocks at level 30, and in the beta version we were able to play it, we were capped at level 25, so we weren't really able to test this. We can speculate based on previous versions of games such as Diablo 3's Demon Hunter that also has that skill. That preparation basically was trading something for something, either discipline for health, discipline for hatred, etc. I expect something similar here, where maybe energy is exchanged for something else, like maybe cooldown, damage, or crowd control. The other two specializations are really good, so I expect something massive here. So before we go over the skills, I do want to mention that I will not be talking about the numbers in terms of damage or cooldowns or things like that, because it's beta and it's all subject to change, but I will go through the descriptions of each skill so you have an idea of what they are. I will also say too that each skill also has upgrade paths in which you have to spend skill points to unlock that give additional effects to all the skills. So with that being said, let's get started. We're going to do the basic skills first. We have Invigorating Strike. This is a melee attack, good for increasing energy regeneration and also applying vulnerability through its upgrade paths. This is really good for early game when you're struggling for resources. We have Blaze Shift, which is also a melee skill, fast attacking melee skill at that. This really excels at movement and the ability to be able to move through enemies after you stab them. Upgrade pass allows for more movement speed and also damage reduction, something you kind of want to do if you want to play more tanky. Puncture, this is a ranged attack that is pretty much just throwing your blades, and they throw your blades pretty quickly too as well. This range attack though doesn't have the distance that the other two arrow attacks I'm about to talk about, but it's still pretty far away. You can kind of throw these pretty safe distance. This scales well with critical hit chance and allows for additional effects such as slowing and ricocheting to additional targets through its upgrade paths. I kind of see this particular basic skill for anyone who likes to build around basic attacks as probably being one of the best ones to do so when you gear up for it. And it's also really good with trap skills. Moving on, Heart Seeker. This is a ranged arrow attack that can hone in on a target. This is a lot like Hungering Arrow, where you can shoot an arrow and like if you miss, it will hone in on a target. It's very similar to that and how it looks and plays. This also scales with critical hit chance, as its upgrade pass allows for things like ricochet, more attack speed, or more critical hit damage. Then lastly, we have Forceful Arrow. This is also a ranged attack that can apply vulnerability status, can pierce through targets if everything is vulnerable, knock back enemies, which is great for keeping your distance, as well as additional crit chance for the skill, all through its upgrade paths. This is going to be one that if you're playing ranged builds, that you'll probably go for more so than the others, simply just because applying vulnerability is a big thing for massive damage as you're gearing up. On to the core skills. These are your bread and butter for the things that you'll be doing on your rogue. We'll start with Flurry. Flurry unleashes a bunch of stabs and slashes up close, has the ability to life leech, cast mass vulnerability, and stun effects through its upgrade paths. I kind of see this as probably the main melee skill that a lot of people will be using, because it's pretty easy to build around to be able to spam. And it also looks pretty cool too as well. Twisted Blades impales a target, leaving both weapons inside the enemy for a few seconds, then returns to your location, piercing enemies in between. Can increase damage, immobilize, and lower cooldowns through its upgrade paths. Now, this one is probably one of the most fun skills I've played on the rogue, as it allows you to be able to dash around the battlefield and position yourself to get all the blades to run through all the enemies, dealing lots and lots of damage as you're doing so. It's not a skill that you would just want to use by itself. You want to pair it with things such as Shallow Step and Dash to be able to be very, very mobile around the battlefield. It's a little tricky to play, but once you kind of get used to it, you'll get it. Penetration Shot shoots an arrow that pierces through all enemies, can deal more damage per enemy in a straight line, apply slow effects and crit chance modifiers through its upgrade paths. This is probably going to be one of the main range rogue skills, as it's actually pretty simple to use. You stay back, stay far back, line everything up, shoot everything in a straight line, stuff dies. Pretty straightforward, very strong skill to use. Barrage shoots 5 arrows that expands out starting from the center. can ricochet and make enemies vulnerable through its upgrade paths. This is also a pretty fun skill too as well. It's also visually pleasing to watch the skill in action. It's really good for clearing out clearing out multiple targets at once through its ricochet abilities, and even on single target damage is pretty good because it can shotgun, so you can get all 5 arrows to hit one target as long as you're pretty close. So this is one of those skills that can kind of be played at a distance or up close, kind of giving you a bit of versatility here. Rapid fire rapidly fires 5 arrows in the line, can gain increased crit chance and crit damage through its upgrade paths. This one I was kind of the least impressed with when I was playing with this for quite a bit. It is a single target damage dealer, but Barrage can kind of do the same thing, just up close. But its upgrade paths are probably one of the strongest out of all the core skills here. Hopefully we'll see more things done to it or some buffs to it as the game continues development. Next up, we have passives. So in some trees, you will have passive skills along with the skills that are within that tree. So for here, these passives are as follows, and they're pretty straightforward. You have Stutter Step, critically striking an enemy grants movement speed. Sturdy, you can increase close damage reduction and siphoning strikes. Heal for 8% of your maximum life when critically striking close enemies. The thing to be aware of with some of the wording here is that when it says close for anything or distance, it really means that. So like, or nearby. If it says nearby or close, it literally means you have to be nearby or close. So sturdy and siphoning strikes, for instance, would not be a passive you would choose if you were trying to play at a distance here. Next up is the agility tree. And first we have dash. Dash for quickly slashing enemies, crit damage modifiers, and crowd control effects open up in its upgrade paths. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can literally dash to relocate, really good for movement. You can dash through enemies, apply different effects. Really good, especially if you're playing an up close type build. Cow traps. Lead back through a trap, slowing enemies. Can be upgraded for damage modifiers and the ability to chill and freeze. This was one of my favorites because I like to play generally at range, and cow traps is really easy to make that happen, as you can, especially if you upgrade it to chill and freeze, because then you get more modifiers to even deal more damage later on down the skill tree. So really good for those who like to play distance. Shadow Step. Warp behind the target and stab them, gaining movement speed afterwards. Crit chance modifiers and immobilize become available through upgrade paths as well as cooldown reduction. So Shadow Step is super cool because you're literally warping behind the target, stabbing them, and then you gain, I think, like 50% movement speed for a couple of seconds, which is really awesome to have, especially if you're combining it with Twisted Blades, because you're super nimble and can move around the battlefield. Twisted Blades, Shadow Step, Dash kind of just makes you very, very difficult to hit, and it basically embodies what I feel a rogue would play like. So Shadow Step should be really a part of anyone's build playing up close. It's super awesome to play. Much like the previous tree, we also have passives in this agility tree as well. Most of these are self-explanatory. Weapon mastery gives offensive bonuses based on the weapon type used. Concussive is enemies knocked down take X% more damage. Rugged is gain X% damage reduction versus damage over time effects. And reactive defense is X% damage reduction while crowd controlled. On to the subterfuge skills. First off, we have Poison Trap. Place a trap that activates when the enemy moves within range, dealing poison damage over time. Can be upgraded to immobilize and reduce cooldowns of imbuements through its upgrade paths. This is the skill if you're wanting to be a trapper. You do have to kind of commit pretty hard to it if you really want to do some significant damage with Poison Trap, or you can just use it as a way to kind of like keep mobs away from you or keep mobs inside for you to deal massive damage. Smoke Grenade. You throw a smoky concoction at enemies, dazing them. Can be upgraded to add damage modifiers, increase duration, and lower cooldowns. So this is really useful for like those tough enemies like elites, because you throw it at them, they can't cast any more affixes or spells, making them easier to down while taking a lot less damage. Really useful for tackling stronger enemies. Doesn't work on bosses though. Dark Shroud. Surround yourself with 5 protective shadows, which add % damage reduction per shadow. Can be upgraded to add crit chance, movement speed, and a chance to not be consumed with it in its upgrade paths. This is the defense skill for rogues, and it gives you a lot of damage reduction, and it is highly advised that you use this in pretty much every one of your builds, because it's really the only one that gives you that much damage reduction as a, you know, with a class that is already pretty glassy. Concealment, vanish from sight, gaining stealth, become immune to crowd control while gaining movement speed and the ability to move through enemies. Can be upgraded to regenerate resources, add vulnerable, and or guarantee critical strike through its upgrade paths. This is pretty much smoke screen from Diablo 3, and you can for the most part treat it as such. This would be really useful for PvP. On to the passives in this skill tree. Malice, deal % increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Agile, using a cooldown increases your dodge chance by X% for a few seconds. And Exploit is you deal increased damage to healthy and injured enemies. Healthy enemies are considered enemies above a certain health threshold, and injured enemies is the exact opposite, where they are below a specific health threshold. Next up is Imbuement skills. And these skills you can actually, I don't want to say that they're skills, but more so they add to your skills to be able to apply certain effects. So you'll be using one, sometimes maybe two, depending on your build. First up is Cold, adding a cold imbuement to core skills. Shadow Step or Dash deals cold damage and chills enemies. Comes with 2 charges and has a cooldown. Can be upgraded to proc vulnerable, increase damage to frozen enemies, or outright just freezes enemies in general. So this is really good for massive crowd control if you want to be able to have control over the battlefield, and you know, especially if you're ranged. Also, another thing to note too as well is that as you're chilling, as you're applying chill, the more that you chill will eventually proc freeze. So like if you like to freeze things and you have additional modifiers to freeze, this is a really cool imbuement to use. Next up is Poison. Adding a poison imbuement to core skills. Shadow Step or Dash deals poison damage over time, comes with 2 charges and also has a cooldown. Can be upgraded to deal increased poison damage and longer duration. This one's more straightforward. It basically adds a poison dot to any of the skills that are mentioned, adding to, like, let's say Trap style play, which already has damage over time effects too as well. Shadow, adding a shadow imbuement to core skills. Shadow Step or Dash deals shadow damage and affect enemies as such as they explode in an area on death, dealing shadow damage. Comes with 2 charges and has a cooldown. Can be upgraded to add mini explosions on chance, proc vulnerable, and give non-elemental damage modifiers. This is probably one of the most popular ones that was used because it kind of gave very easy access to have lots of area of effects happening upon procs. It's also probably the coolest looking and coolest sounding of the 3. So it kind of allows you to be able to kind of focus on the single target, make that target explode, and kind of chain reaction the other explosions. Really cool effect. Probably the one that would be the most used for rogues throughout their adventure. So there are a lot of passives in this tree. They pretty much correlate with the specific imbuement that you choose. Starting with Shadow Crash. Shadow damage has a % chance to stun. Consuming shadows. Killing an enemy with shadow damage generates X% resources. Deadly Venom, you deal X% increased poison damage. Alchemical Advantage, you gain % increased attack speed for each enemy poison. Debilitating Toxins, poison enemies deal % less damage. Potency, your imbuement skills effects have % increased potency. Precision imbuement skills gain % increased critical strike chance. Rapid imbuement, the cooldowns of your imbuement skills are reduced by X%. And trick attacks, which is up to a % chance to apply a random equipped imbuement skill effect when dealing direct damage. Now onto our ultimate skills. The ultimate skills in general have a pretty lengthy cooldown, but come with various effects that can be pretty useful in the battlefield if you plan to build around them. First off, we have Shadow Clone. Your shadow mimics your actions for X seconds and deals X% of your damage. Can be upgraded to become crowd control immune, aka unstoppable, for a duration after casting Shadow Clone, and make your clone deal more damage. Now we have Death Trap. Place a trap that arms after X seconds, activating when the enemy moves within range, dealing X% damage. Can be upgraded to lower the cooldown and add a pull effect. This is especially useful for those who are building around a trapper playstyle, as this is going to be part of your arsenal to round off that gameplay. Rain of Arrows. Arrows rain over a large area with 2 waves, each dealing X% damage. Can be upgraded to apply all imbuement effects and knock down enemies on last wave. This one's pretty useful for skills that are more single target based, as this has a really wide AoE attack. These are the passives that are in the ultimate skill tree. So we're going to start off with Trap Mastery. When the Poison Trap or Death Trap activates, you gain X% increased critical strike chance against vulnerable and crowd control enemies for X seconds. Aftermath is after you using an ultimate skill, restore X amount of energy. Adrenaline Rush is while moving, you can gain X% increased energy regeneration. Haste is while at or above X% energy, gain X% increased movement speed, while below, gain X% increased attack speed. Impetus is after moving X meters, your next attack deals X% increased damage. Innervation is up to an X% chance to gain 8 energy. Alchemist Fortune, non-physical damage you deal has X% increased lucky chance. And Second Wind is every X energy you spend grants you X% increased lucky hit chance for 5 seconds. Sorry for all the X's. Again, like I said, I didn't want to put numbers out there that I'm pretty sure it's going to change after beta. And finally, we have what I would call our final passives. Probably going to come up with a better name for that later, but they're basically like the end of your skill tree passives. Unfortunately, for early impressions beta, we did not have access to that because we were not able to get enough skill points at level 25 to reach these final passives, but we are able to see what they do. So Momentum. Melee skills grant a stack of momentum if they're either hit or stun, immobilize or frozen enemy, hit any enemy from behind. Also, while at 3 stacks of momentum, you gain increased damage reduction, increased energy regeneration, as well as increased attack speed. So this seems like something that you would want to take if you want to be really mobile, such as going with the Twisting Blades build, Shadow Step to hit from behind to make sure you have that positioning. I think this passive really fits that playstyle quite a bit. Then you have Close Quarters Combat. Damaging a nearby enemy with a range or melee skill gives you attack speed bonuses. While the bonuses are there, you also have a chance to generate more energy as well as increased damage. This is one of those things where it seems like they're trying to mix melee and ranged together to make a hybrid. Barrage kind of fits into that category as earlier as I was talking about, where you can shotgun all of your barrage shots on a single target. So this seems like something that a skill like that and Flurry can work together to be able to make something pretty cool. And this passive, I believe, probably allows that. Then we have Precision, which is critical strikes with range skills grant you precision. You gain critical strike damage per stack of precision up to a particular maximum. When you reach your maximum precision, your next range skill is a guaranteed critical strike that deals more damage and then consumes all stacks of precision. So this is definitely like your range combo based type character gameplay. So I would go for this if you're kind of looking for that kind of playstyle. Victimize, dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has a chance to cause an explosion, dealing a percentage of the original damage to them and surrounding enemies. Actually kind of sounds a little bit like area damage in Diablo 3, where you're basically being able to add a little bit of area effect to to your skills as it is, almost kind of like shadow, the shadow imbue type thing. So this is something that I would see, like, you know, using something like fast attacks to be able to practice often. You have exposure, which is there's a chance to reduce cooldowns of your trap skills and drop a cluster of stun grenades that explode and deal damage and stuns enemies. So this is definitely obviously your trap passive. So if you're going to be doing any like trapping skills, this is how you want to round off your rogue, you know, overall, by going with this passive that's pretty much designed for this. There are also legendary and unique effects that also change the way that skills perform and function. However, fortunately, we don't have any B-roll images or videos to kind of really showcase all those things for me to actually talk about, as even uniques weren't even available in the early impressions beta that we had access to. So, but make sure that you do keep up to date by visiting Maxroll, our site that is going to continue to update things as we get more information on. Other than that, pretty much ends up my impressions, my first impressions. I think the Rogue is going to be an awesome and amazing class to play. As you all guys know, I'm going to be min-maxing that to the fullest. So make sure that you like and subscribe for more information dealing with Rogue. And as always, till next time.